So now we're going to hear from our Assistant Town Manager on the town's capital plan. Kate, why don't you take it away?
Thanks. Okay, good evening. I'm Kate Hodges, Deputy Town Manager. Article 11 seeks authorization for an appropriation of funds related to capital expenditures. Capital expenditures are the use of funds to acquire or enhance productive assets that have a life expectancy of at least 2 years and cost at least $5,000. Assets procured with the intention of increasing service capacity and creating efficiencies are known as capital outlay projects. Outlay projects are supported within the levy limit and are often referred to as cash capital or non-borrowing. The total proposed for capital outlay projects for fiscal year 21 is $1,787,195. If an item or project is over $100,000 with a life expectancy of at least 5 years, the town is able to utilize debt as a funding source. And those are considered the more traditional capital projects. The proposed borrowing supported projects for fiscal year 21 total $5,250,000, which includes $4,350,000 in town projects and $900,000 for the Concord Public Schools. The highlighted yellow language in the motion this year is a bit different than those of years past. During the 2016 town meeting, $150,000 was included in the capital authorization plan to supplement a pre-scheduled fire truck replacement for fiscal year 19. That amount was included in the 2019 general obligation debt issue. Unfortunately, there was a fire in the West Concord Fire Station, and that truck was totaled in 2017 and subsequently replaced by the town's insurer. So because we had already issued this debt, there was no opportunity to rescind that authorization. Therefore, we'd like to transfer the amount, this $150,000, to offset this year's capital. Am I doing something wrong? What is it? Thanks. This is another unreadable chart, which is the snapshot of the town's multi-year capital program, which details the projected larger scale renovations or acquisitions between now and fiscal year 25. Thanks. Here you can see specific fiscal year 21 capital projects, which will be funded through the capital outlay. The total for these projects, again, is $1,787,195,000 as seen in the motion. The borrowing projects for fiscal year 21 total $5,250,000. Projects recommended for funding, including those within the departments and divisions of recreation, parks and open space, facilities, natural resources, public works, fire, and Concord Public Schools. Project number 1 relates to Emerson Playground, which means the physical structure located immediately adjacent to the Hunt Gym at Emerson Field. For years, Concord has been successful in maintaining compliance for its public playgrounds by using a mixture of wood chips and sawdust, commonly referred to as playground safety fiber. Emerson Playground, pictured above, is almost exclusively surfaced with this. In January of this year, the Architectural Access Board voted to establish new regulations for playground surfacing. The AAB has set a 2-year trial period ending in January of 2021 for manufacturers to propose alternative accessible surface solutions. During the 2-year period, the AAB said that they would accept the use of alternative materials, but only on a case-by-case basis, and also only if any of the materials have the same feel and provide equal or better access than the pour-in-place rubber. It was said that wood chips, sand, and fiber and other shovelable surfaces would not be accepted, and so the amount sought, $200,000, is for the removal of the old fiber wood chips and the installation of a pour-in-place subsurface covering 8,600 square feet. If properly maintained, it will last for about 12 to 15 years. Project 2 relates to the ongoing development of Giroux Park, purchased for $2.7 million in July of 2018. Since that time, there has been a number of public hearings, site visits, and brainstorming sessions where the overwhelming majority of community members expressed a desire for sustainable plantings and development, open space preservation, and quiet, passive recreational opportunities. Refinement of the plan over the past several months took many things into consideration, including the site limitations, natural resources and zoning regulations, and community feedback. Effective last month, master planning and the investigatory process had been completed, and in April, the development plan will be reviewed by the Natural Resources Commission. Providing that the plan is acceptable, we plan to bid the parkland project on or before May 1st for a summer and fall construction bid. The blue portions here in the picture relate to this year's CPC request for $500,000, which would be heard at a separate meeting. It will be used to supplement funds needed for a composting toilet facility and accessible pathways to and from that. The orange and red sections are included in Phase 1, and they propose a new entrance driveway off Commonwealth Ave, allowing the previous driveway to now become part of the new affordable housing lot, and 3 large-scale stormwater bioretention areas, one with a sizable sustainable garden, bridge, and a reflection area for passive recreational use. The remainder of this phase relates to invasive species mitigation, slope restoration, and erosion control to help with pond health. The green areas of this part are part of a potential Phase 2 and would include proposals for a fishing pier, gathering areas, kayak launches, and additional blazed nature trails on the western side of the property. This table depicts the monetary breakdown for the Giroux project as of March 1st. The total necessary to complete Phase 1 is about $1.75 million. Funding from last year's capital plan and the CPC allocation will be combined with this year's request from both capital and CPC to create a balance of about $1.8 million. Project 3 relates to the Rideout Park in West Concord. As West Concord's largest active recreational site, more than 50,000 visitors use the park amenities listed above. The capital request of $195,000 is being sought for the Facilities Department to spearhead the renovation of the park bathroom facility. Last renovated in the mid-'80s, the facility is woefully inadequate for the volume of use and lack of sustainable features which the Recreation Director and Facilities Director want. They want low-flow toilets, automatic faucets, and automatic shut-off lights. Project number 4 seeks $500,000 for dredging 2 areas in Warner's Pond. This is a natural resources multi-year project with funding proposed within the town's capital plan for this year and fiscal '22. The total amount needed for the dredging of these 2 areas within the red circles above equates to about $2 million. It's important to note that regardless of whether swimming is pursued in or around Warner's Pond, the strategic dredging, if not completed, would hinder boating and other types of passive recreational activities. If anyone was out there during the spring and early summer months, some of the area near the Boy Scouts island was almost impassable. Project 5 relates to accessibility improvements and stormwater management for the White Pond Beach area. Current access to the beach is achieved via a set of stairs which vary in size, rise, and depth, traversing an approximate 50-foot descent. A comprehensive master plan for the facility relative to access and accessibility began about a year ago. At the time, we had thought the highest need for the property was a restroom, in addition to the accessibility. Having just completed the first year of the swim season, which was managed by Facilities in the Recreation Department, it was clear that stormwater management and extreme runoff into the pond must be the town's focus in order to maintain this new asset and ensure overall better pond health. The development of a slope restoration program which works to incorporate both underground stormwater catch basins and above-level treatment areas with sustainable plantings will help erosion. Hillside detention ponds will be added to trap runoff before it reaches the pond's edge. Our hope is that this will aid in eliminating pollutions and the washout. The next project relates to the fire apparatus. Ladder 1 is a 2011 Emergency 1 110-foot aerial ladder truck. $250,000 will be used to refurbish Ladder 1, which is approaching its 9th year of service. This scheduled maintenance is required to sustain the 20-year use expectancy of the apparatus. Systems to refurbish are listed on the left-hand side of this slide. Similarly, $275,000 is sought to replace the 2011 E1 ambulance, which is entering its 9th year of service. To maintain high-quality ambulances, the fire department replaces these vehicles every 9 years. They have the ambulances in the front line of service for 6 years and then in reserve for the remainder of the 3. This ambulance is currently operating as a reserve, covering for when others are out of service or in for maintenance, and also serves as a backup when temporary staffing and an additional ambulance is necessary. The next is for Concord Public Works, who seeks $1.73 million for the roads program that continues to address the need to bring up the average pavement condition index of the town's 107-mile street network. The roads to be rehabilitated with the 1.73 will be combined with $670,000 of Chapter 90 state funds. And the roads to repair will include Peter Spring Road and Prescott Road neighborhoods, the Butternut Circle and Minot Road neighborhood, and Hubbard Street. The program will coordinate with water and other utilities to address their needs as well. Those are the capital projects for fiscal year 21, and the town would appreciate affirmative action.
Questions from the committee?
Just one question. Did you say that part of this is a capital plan for the schools?
Yeah.
And how much is that?
$900,000, and my understanding is that's included in their presentation, specific to what they're going to be using that for.
I have a few questions. First of all, I understand that there's a lot on your plate, so I appreciate all the work that you've done. I would just like to get a better idea for how much we're asking for each of these projects this year and how much is going to be accomplished with that money. Because we've got a lot of money that's already been appropriated. We've got projects that are going to span several years. So, for example, we can just start with Emerson Park, for example. So for Emerson Park, this particular article is asking for $200,000.
195.
195, okay.
It's 200.
No, it's
Oh, I'm
actually-
sorry,
it's
200. Yep,
actually
I'm sorry,
200.
right out is 195, yes.
So Emerson is asking for 200, and that's to do something at the actual playground, if I understood you correctly, right? Okay.
Correct.
What about the 500,000 that's already been approved in the last 2 years? Has that been spent, or is that,
Is this for Emerson Field?
that's the field? And that's
Yes,
different.
that has not been spent, but Aaron McCloskey, he's here today, and he is actually spearheading that. That's for the field, not the playground.
Got it, good. Okay, thank you. That clarifies that for me, thanks. Okay, let's go to Giroux for a minute, okay? So now, this year, this article, this $5 million that we're asking for includes $600,000 for Giroux.
That's correct.
And so that's in addition to, I think, a total of about 3.8 that we've already allocated to that.
We purchased the property for,
Exactly.
correct, yep.
Well, we purchased it for 2.5, and then we've got 200 from CPC, and there's a lot of numbers floating around
We
here,
purchased
right?
it for 2.7.
2.7, thank you. And so then, this year, we're asking for another 600,000, plus I think CPC is asking for $500,000.
Correct.
Right? So is that money going to be added to the money that's already allocated, or what?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and what are we going to get for that again at Giroux?
With any luck, we will be getting a new driveway over and a parking area. See if I can get to the... So basically everything you see here, with the exception of some of the modifications that we have here in sort of the green areas, but we'll get all the stormwater management, the bioretention areas, an open field, accessible walking paths that are paved throughout, blazed nature trails with wood chips throughout the woodland area on the left-hand side. We'll get a slope that comes down so that there can be access to a small cove area where you could launch canoes or kayaks. Could be, in a future phase, the site of a boat dock or some kind of launching system. You'll get parking. We're going to have a composting toilet facility with 2 2 different restroom areas. We're toying between either having male or female or unisex with changing tables there. A large kind of barn-style event pavilion that is going to be set in the back. That's sort of a tongue-and-groove log cabin style. Sustainable plantings, lots of native plantings to separate the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail sort of from this, and then all of the connections that you see either all the way on the right-hand side to the parking, and then up the top, which are the bike connections to the rail
Okay,
trail.
so that's all for, is there going to be further money required for Giroux? Or did everything you just described, is that going to be covered with this 600,000 and the 500 from CPC?
Everything I described is covered.
Okay.
Anything that we would want to do or the community would want to do in the future, we would have to come back, but we'd like to finish phase 1 and live with it for a while. And
Right, good.
So that's phase 1. So phase 1, if I look at the acquisition cost plus phase 1, so we will be spending around 4.7 million, is that right?
Yep, we were averaging 5 because we're trying to plan for contingency, but we have
Around 5 million for phase 1. Is there a plan for phase 2?
not at this time.
Okay.
Okay, and then my last question is White Pond, right?
Yes,
So you're asking for 600,000 for White Pond, right?
correct.
And that's in addition to the 850 that we've already gotten from CPC and last year's capital article, right?
We did not receive 850,000 for,
Well, last year, I think you got 250 from CPC and then 600,000 from the town.
oh, right, but you said
That was
800, yes,
850, so that adds
correct.
up to 850?
correct,
And then another 600 this year?
correct.
So that's 1.4 million, right? Okay, so, and again, what do we get for the 1.4?
So we're not as far along in the White Pond project as far as costing it out, so I just want to be clear that what we have are based on the initial estimates from our master planning, but we haven't gone to the full cost analysis. My understanding is that regardless of whether we have, you know, the 1.4 or something around there, we're going to have a little bit of repointing of the parking lot to have some other parking areas that are up there, and if you've driven in and out, it's pretty difficult to get 2 cars going down in the same way, so we're going to have some one-way traffic. The pathway that's going down the middle is an accessible pathway with a set of stairs, new stairs that are regulation in the center. There'll also be restoration to the boat launch access drive that comes down and a small landing area that would have stormwater retention underneath it. We're also going to do a bunch of, which you can't see from here, slope restoration, so it's quite a steady pitch that goes down, and so we're going to try to use the areas that are around the new pathways that come down to have some bioretention areas to try to catch the water before it comes running down and goes into the pond. Right now, when it's a heavy rain, everything that is, all the rain and everything that it brings with it ends up basically on the beach.
I know.
And so we're trying to mitigate that.
Okay, I lied, I have one more question. When you're talking about things like a pavilion or whatever, I forget what you called it at Giroux, right? What's the process that we use to make sure that that is in fact what people want on that property?
Sure. Well, we had, in the instance of Giroux, 5 public hearings, and we had 2 of those public hearings were actually on site where we walked the property with interested citizens, and we did a couple of online forums where we did a Facebook Live that was there and tried to gather feedback from that. We also did a townwide survey where we had 3,200 responses to that to try to figure out what people wanted. So I'm fairly confident in our ability as the town to say that we really are representing what we've heard from the people who have answered our questions about what they'd like to have.
That's funny, I didn't get that. I don't remember getting that survey, but anyway, it would be really good if, I guess I should pay better attention to giving feedback. Thank you.
Yes.
I just have a couple, one suggestion. I think your presentation is really spot on. You're giving people the visuals and all, okay, but that's not my comment. Oh, that's all right, in the noise. My comment would be, there's, in the budget book, pages 48 and 49 talk about the capital outlay, which will help people understand a 5-year time frame, because this is a 5-year time frame on those 2 pages for the capital outlay, as well as the debt on page 51. And I think it might be helpful during your presentation, because the budget book will be available for people at town meeting as well, if they haven't brought their own. And you might be able to reference those pages if people want to follow along, because there may be some questions along Mary's line of questioning about, well, what about the future, you know, and how is money going to be spent in the next 2 to 5 years? And so that would be one suggestion.
Great.
My other would be, and I understand you've been having all these hearings and on, but when we talk to people about how much money is being spent on a project, and we're looking further out, up to 5 years, and they'll see $400,000 in FY24, they may want to know what is going on at that point in time. So it's just more of a heads up.
Okay.
But also, if you, sometime in the next 12 months, if you want to talk to people about different projects, as you have been doing in the past, I think it would be good to help them to better understand what's happening when, so that they have an understanding too of when the needs are going to be coming up.
So we're going to be beginning the same process that we followed effectively for Giroux, for White Pond very soon. So we'll make sure that you get those emails, and because that's basically how we're able to narrow down the scope, and then we'll go and say everything that we just said costs X. What's the highest and most important thing?
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a few nuts and bolts questions. If we could go to the slide for Public Works Roads Program, and just look at that for 1 second.
Oop, sorry.
Go back. I don't think any of the streets that are being addressed this year are arterial, so I'm not going to press hard on the complete streets, you know, initiatives, which are generally useful for arterial roads where you have multi-use and we need to redevelop the streets themselves. So that's not my question. My question is our sidewalk improvements part of this article?
No, this is roads and parking lots, but there is a
where
sidewalk.
would-
Oh, Alan, would you like to come up? I was trying. Chris, can you go back to, I don't know what just happened.
Sorry.
Well, because there's some in
Parks are part of like a complete streets.
it's part of capital outlay.
Here we go. Here we go.
I'm Steve Dukran, town engineer. The roads program addresses pretty much the pavement rehabilitation. We do have a sidewalks budget that will address essentially any sidewalk needs like repairs and replacements, ADA ramps and so on. So we tapped into that budget when we do the roads program.
Do you publish an annual list of sidewalks that you're either going to resurface, improve, or add to the community? Is that something that you plan out through the budgeting process? Is there anything you can say to that question?
Actually, we have some that we have targeted for this year. Lawsbrook Road, Sudbury Road from Thorough to Main, and Hubbard Street. Those are the priorities for any sidewalk extensions or replacement. But on the streets that we are paving, like we saw the list before, if we have any handicap ramps that have needs, we will address those needs.
Thank you. The reason I ask this question, and this will be the first time I think I've done this in a public hearing, but I've done it in Finance Committee question and answer periods during our meetings. The sidewalk that does not exist is the one that goes down Thoreau Street or down Walden Street to Walden Pond. It is a very dangerous thing in the summertime, people 2 and 3 abreast with picnic coolers, beach chairs. It is extremely dangerous, and if you can get it on your sidewalk improvement or addition list, it is a critical place where people they're not community members generally. They might stop at the depot, get off the train, and walk down, or they park at the high school and walk down. There's no sidewalk. We need to get it on the agenda at some point. So.
And I do have a response to that too. Yeah, I'm relatively new to the town, so in my research as to what's been happening, I have seen where there was a plan for future years for addressing that particular sidewalk.
So there's a plan in future years. Do you have a year? Is that-
Yeah,
Okay, I'll drop it. But I just want to somehow get it out in the public space. So
I'm sorry, I also just wanted to mention that the first couple of slides for this was the non-borrowing. And so there are requests here on the non-borrowing articles that kind of go to all of the different buckets of public works, including engineering, highway, road, park and tree, equipment, drainage, and sidewalks.
and sidewalks, thank you.
Dean, I have some questions too, when you have a minute. Yeah? Go ahead.
Can I go to my second
Please.
one, and then I'll get to you, Chris?
Got it.
Could you go to slide 11, please?
Well, you know what? These aren't numbered. Do we know which one's
On the
11?
bottom. Bottom
Oh,
corner.
11, there it
There it
is.
was.
Okay.
There you go. Okay. So here we are at the funding plan for finally getting to dredging Warner's Pond. This has been going on since 2011. All of the activity to date has been managed by the Department of Natural Resources, and this is in parks and playgrounds in the budget. Why is the Department of Natural Resources, who has been managing this project from 2011, not managing the dredging?
They are managing the dredging.
Well, it's not in their budget.
Well, its park and playground budget is new, and it was dealing with capital projects for either open space or large park areas. And so we're hoping that Delia and our finance director and our recreation director are all going to work together, much like Delia's involvement with the White Pond projects. And so where it is, as far as monetarily, doesn't necessarily dictate who's overseeing it. This is a natural resources project, absolutely.
Okay. I'm a former member of the Natural Resources Commission, so the Natural Resources Commission and the oversight of any embankments or any kind of work anywhere near a wetland or a waterway are obviously engaging with the Natural Resources Department.
You're not getting any fight from us. I agree with you. It's a
Okay.
natural resources
All right,
project.
very good, thank you. Chris?
Okay, thanks. I'm going to stick with this one just to make sure I understand it. So Warner's Pond dredging on the chart that showed the multi-year added up to about 2 million. Is that a good estimate for the whole thing? Is that like phase one in Giroux, or are we still figuring out what it's going to cost?
When you say the whole thing, you mean just the areas in the red or the whole pond?
So like Giroux, you had a plan for what am I going to do with this thing. For White Pond, for Warner's Pond, is there a plan?
Yes.
And do we know what the total plan is, what it's going to cost? I assume that includes dredging, but there may be more. So I'm trying to get a bigger picture on that property.
Sure. So much like what Mr. Banfield said before, there was a bunch of studies and things that were done for many, many years prior to this. And so what you're seeing is basically what all of those studies had told us. It will be somewhere between 2 and 2.5 million for these two particular areas.
Okay.
We don't believe that enough has changed since ESS did their dredging feasibility study to now. Usually these things take, a decade to, 15 years to really change. So if this were to be approved, it's a very, very good estimate, barring any unforeseen circumstances, that this is what it's going to cost. The one caveat with that is that we have to dredge the material up, take it, and then we are going to be using or proposing to use some of the state land at the farm near the minimum security prison to be able to dewater it. And not having to truck that out of town is what is really going to save quite a bit of money. And so if something were to change in that aspect, and we don't anticipate that it will, but the state moves at a pace that isn't necessarily the same as ours.
Okay. Okay, so if it's dredged, so when we finish dredging, is there going to be a phase two, or are we thinking we can use the property once it's dredged?
You'll be able to use the property. You'll see a considerable difference. The pond health, as it is, will last a long time. I can tell you one of the problems with this property is that the output from Route 2 runs underneath and right into the Giroux area, and that is pretty much where we're seeing, the greatest sediment that's lasting right there. when the Mass DOT finally decides to kick off the Route 2 renovation project, we've already put a plug in and had an unofficial okay that they're going to take up that pipe, decommission it, and have a bioretention area where the farm is on the other side, where the horse barn is for the state police. That will start to alleviate a lot of the problem on the other end. Then we have to make a community decision whether people want to swim at Warner's Pond or not. If they do, we would need an additional dredging of that area that's been, polluted from the Route 2 runoff for years, but we're talking years.
Okay, all right, so, and my last one, so on the White Pond, similar question, so it looks like on a multi-year schedule, it's like 1.6 million on that property. Is that part of, have you got a phase 1 plan for that, or is that sort of, you said you were kind of surprised about stormwater, you wanted to do access, so are we still really figuring out what we need to do there?
I think that what we need to do in the initial period is here. We're getting a lot of mixed reviews, whether the portable toilet facility is adequate enough or whether people want a permanent toilet facility. Right now, we've decided that we're backburnering that in lieu of doing the stormwater management. So there's potential that we might come back if the community really has that as a desire and propose other things. I can tell you that just these improvements alone would make the health of the pond and the accessibility great. And so if this is all that the community really wants to do for a while, I mean, that's fine. We're not really envisioning anything else except for getting these initial problems set. But there's lots of things that people have said. Someone proposed a band shell there. I mean, there's a lot of things that people want to see that we're not prepared to cost out yet.
Okay, thank you. One last question. So you mentioned in this survey process or in the hearing process that when people give you the wish list, which everybody has a long wish list until they say, what's it going to cost me?
Right.
How are those two things married in these hearings? Do you give them a cost?
Yes. Well, we haven't done that for White Pond yet, but for Giroux, what we did is we got the wish list. And anything that was a reoccurring wish, so there's lots of things that people put in that 1 or 2, but if we get a percentage, 5% or more of the respondents that have a certain thing that's a wish, we try to cost that out. And what we did for the second hearing is come back and say these were the top 15 items that people wanted and this is what it costs. And actually one of them was a playground. And so one of the things we said is, that's about $200,000. And so immediately it was, well, we'd rather have a bathroom facility there than a playground. And then that determination was made.
Okay, thank you.
So since you have the White Pond slide up, are you happy enough with the bathroom facility that you've brought in? Is that, because it's not on this list, and you're saying, after we do this, we're pretty
I
happy.
just think it's funny because we constantly talk about bathrooms. Every time I'm up here, it has been 4 years of talking about bathrooms in various places around
That's okay.
town.
CCHS will have their opportunity as well.
So I am going to defer probably to Ryan Kane on that one because he would be the one that was hearing either this is the best bathroom I've ever been in or the opposite. And so I'd like for him to answer that question, if I could.
Ryan Kane, Director of Recreation. Overall, I would say the bathroom facility was very functional and manageable, and people were happy with it. And the use of White Pond was not the overbearing rush of people that some people in public hearings had anticipated. It was pretty consistent with what had happened at White Pond previously. So that bathroom facility can manage what is happening with our current attendance. The only fears would be if attendance grew, would it be able to sustain and hold under that pressure? But so
Thank you.
we were happy. Thank you.
Okay, Matt Johnson, 21 Winther Street. I guess each of the projects has had their own public feedback process, but then kind of stepping back and looking at all the projects that are being put forward this year, they all have this, I mean, not all, there's ambulances and stuff, but most of them seem to have a similar kind of recreational profile to them. And it seems like a whole lot to be doing in a single year, if you look at the totality of it. I mean, is there any way to kind of time phase this and as well time phase the costs? Because it just seems like we're going to radically change the recreational profile of Concord, it looks like, in just a year or two. And it's also interesting, even looking at this picture, if you don't have very good vision and you saw the recent Walden Pond proposal that the state is doing, they're also taking a pond and they're adding new bath facilities and overlooks and all kinds of amenities that now will have 1, 2, 3 ponds that all are having all of these additional recreational facilities, fresh recreational facilities added. And so it just seems strange to me that we'd be doing all of this all at once rather than time phasing it.
So understood, and we like to make sure that there isn't a moment in the day that we are affording any sleep or eating. So we just make sure we're constantly doing work. But what I can say is that the project managers for most of these are very different. The project manager for the dredging project is natural resources, and with the White Pond and Giroux recreational phasing, it was not ideal, but the White Pond was gifted to us, and we weren't in a position that we wanted to turn down that gift, and so it sort of just by circumstance sort of rose to the level where we said, let's take that on. And so what we've done is essentially space them out about 7 months from one another. That's in a perfect world. I think realistically we're probably looking at 8 to 10 months, and that's if we have a winter like this one. And so what we were hoping to do is Giroux Phase 1 would be nearly complete by the end of this year, so in December, November, December, except for a punch list in the springtime, and that we would have the bioretention in by the time the first snow falls so that we are mitigating the stormwater runoff, but we wouldn't have the pathway and any of that done until the following spring. And so we have thought of that, and we have phased that enough that it's manageable. The other thing is that the team that is doing these 2 larger projects, it consists of myself, the recreation director, and the facilities director. And so you have 3 people who are managing these projects in different aspects, and I think that it's exciting, and we want to do it. So.
And then just having in the past hauled all kinds of gear as well as even children up and down the existing steps, I understand that they could be improved. But I thought that putting the disabled parking, handicap parking down near the pond itself would have averted the need to create such an elaborate and expensive ADA path from the main parking lot. Is it not the case?
It can be the case. We didn't do it just based on ADA. The recreational standard is called universal design, and that's for people with mobility issues, either temporary or permanent. And that includes toddlers, that includes people that have a broken ankle, that includes parents. I myself have hauled stuff, usually in a wagon, and going downstairs with a wagon that traverses 50 feet down is a problem. And so this was the way that we could make sure that everybody is able to access, whether they are in a wheelchair or have a walker or not, whether they have a stroller or anything else. When talking to people about what we need to do, access was the number one thing that we heard, and it was difficult, and for the most part it's young families and younger children that are there most of the time during the day, and it's very difficult for them to traverse up and down, and they wouldn't be able to have a space down below to park, and it wouldn't really be feasible for a parent to drop the children off and then go up and park and come down. You can't leave them alone.
It's funny, we used to do it all the time.
Well, we don't want to encourage that.
Are there any further questions on this article? Thank you, Kate.